Which I believe all of you will get the new issue of National Review that as the cover story is really about my theory, but also about Gale's theory. And Gale has really been critical to my thinking on a wide range of subjects. He's a professor of economics in Hawaii. I don't know how you get to live in Hawaii and be a professor and write great books and think new ideas. But welcome, Gale Pooley.
I'm not the greatest professor in this room. George is the greatest econ professor in this room. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. You know, when Buzz Aldrin went to the moon in July of 1969, he carried along one of these, his trusty slide rule. And at the time, you could buy one of these for about $10.95. And people were earning back in 1969, typical blue-collar worker was earning about $3.72 an hour. So you worked about 3 hours, you could buy one of these. So if we think about this, today, because of our friends across the street here, you can buy one of these for about $832. People are earning about $32 an hour, so it takes about 26 hours to buy one of these. This device will... the GPU in this thing runs about 12 teraflops. So you do 12 trillion calculations. So for the time that it took you to, you get one calculation per second, you get about 12 trillion calculations per second today. So we really have this this abundance of, you can think of it as, we've got this abundance of slide rules that have appeared. Now, Moore's law suggests that you can double things in 12 to 24 months. The slide rule to the Xbox rate has been doubling every 15 months, or an increase of about 71% a year for the last 52 years. Now, in the movie Infinity Wars, Thanos says, it's simple calculus. The universe is finite, its resources finite. If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist. It needs correcting. Now, after listening to Neil and Peter this morning, I think maybe Thanos was an optimist. But in a sense, Thanos is right. There are a fixed number of atoms, really, on this planet. But economics is not about atoms. Economics is about knowledge. Economics is not physics. Economics is about how we create value for one another. And it's the value of things that count, not the quantity of things. We measure economically, not physically. Now, George's information theory of economics stands on these three principles. First is wealth is knowledge, growth is learning, and money is time. Now, let's talk about time, this last principle. Money is time means, time essentially means, money is time essentially means that we buy things with money, but we really pay for them with our time. It means that instead of dollars and cents, we can use hours and minutes to price things. We can use time prices. William Nordhaus, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, wrote this beautiful paper about the time price of light. And he goes back in time and looks at the price it cost, how much time you had to devote to earn enough money to buy light. Just going back to 1830, it required about 3 hours of work to be able to earn the money to buy 1 hour of time. Well, today, with the most advanced LED technology, you can buy an hour of time for 0.116 of a second, an hour of light for less than 0.116 of a second of time. So we've had this tremendous abundance of light. It represents about a on an individual basis, we have about almost 6.7 billion million times more light today than we did in 1830. Now, if you multiply that personal abundance of light by the population. Remember, we only had, what, 1.2 billion people in 1830. Today, we've got 7.8 billion. So we've had this increase in population, and this, you combine it with the increase of light, we end up with about 43 million% increase. Actually, that's the wrong number. It's 43 billion. 43, is that right? Yeah, 43 million% increase. You do the math. But the point is we've been increasing about 7% a year in this light abundance, and this is happening all around us. Another key thing that we look at is this resource abundance elasticity of population. In other words, when we add a percent to the population, what happens to this abundance? Every percent increase in population corresponded to about a 79,000% increase in light. It's as if someone walked in the room here and said, look, I'll pay for everybody's tickets to attend here, and I'll pay for everybody's airfare to come here. That's the kind of abundance that we've been enjoying with just this marginal population increase. Now, the time price is simply the money price divided by your hourly income. Now, time prices have 4 advantages that we think about. The first advantage is it fully captures innovation. When we have an innovation occur, and an innovation is really this creation of valuable knowledge. When we have an innovation that occurs, it not only lowers prices, it increases people's incomes. So you really need to consider both income and prices to fully capture what innovation is doing to your standard of living. So it's capturing both of those things in one value. The second important thing is you remove all the subjectivity and contention associated with GDP deflators and CPI adjustments. You can go right to a time price, and you avoid all of that contention that deal with these adjustments to monetary inflation. The third value of a time price is you can go to any time, at any place, with any product. You can go back to France in 1850 and calculate a time price for a pound of sugar. And you can compare that time price to a price today or another product. So it gives you this ability to compare different products across time and space. And then the fourth value of a time price is that it takes things to this universal constant of time, this universal constant. And all measures really fundamentally go back to time. They go back to time. And time cannot be inflated. It can't be counterfeited. It is both fixed and continuous. And as Steve Forbes has noted, central banks can print money, but they can't print time. So we argue that time prices are really the true prices that we should be paying attention to. And paraphrase the great mind of Carver Mead, we would say, listen to the time prices and find out what they're telling you, okay? Let's take an example of how this works. A gallon of milk today, let's say it's $4, and you're earning $20 an hour. So it takes you about 12 minutes of time to earn a gallon of milk. If we go back to 1980, milk was only $2 a gallon, but average wage was $7 an hour. So it took you about 17 minutes to earn a gallon of milk. So the price has fallen for what? Fallen from what, about 29%? The other way to think about it is if you had spent 17 minutes today earning the money to buy a gallon of milk, how much milk could you get? Well, 17 divided by 12, that's 1.42. You would get 1.42 gallons, so the abundance of milk is increased by 42%. Now, as George noted, the difference between our age and the Stone Age is really this, the difference between our age and the Stone Age is entirely due to the growth of knowledge. Not the growth of atoms, not the growth of physical things, it's the growth of knowledge that's occurring. And we can measure knowledge with time. We can measure the growth of knowledge with time. Now, we're familiar with these productivity gains in computer tech. We see this around us, and we're in this business, and we think about it. But what about other products, like basic commodities? Is there any innovation occurring in wheat or lumber or cotton? Now, the World Bank actually tracks the prices of a wide variety of commodities. We went back to 1980. They have pretty good data back to 1980. And we We looked at 50 basic commodities, from energy to food to materials, minerals, and metals. These include crude oil to bananas, lumber to wheat, copper to platinum. Now, what we found is that the average time price had dropped by 75.2%. Now, what that means is for the time required to earn the money to buy 1 unit in 1980, you would get 4.03 units today. So that's a 303% increase in abundance in these basic commodities. Now, this occurred at the same time that population increased about 75.8%. It's kind of an odd thing we discovered, that every 1% increase in the population corresponded to this 1% decrease in the time price. But it's the time price decrease. Remember, a percentage decrease is different than a percentage increase. So we convert that percentage decrease into this abundance factor, and then we multiply it times the population. So time prices go down by 75.2%. It means that for the same amount of time, you get 300% more. During the same period, population increased by 75.8%. So you take these two together, how much is your personal resource abundance increasing, and then how much is the population increasing? In other words, the size of the slice of your pizza, what's it doing, and then what's the whole pizza doing for the planet? And we combine those two together to get this overall measure of abundance, and it's indicating about a 608% increase in overall resource abundance with these 50 commodities. That's growing at about 5% a year. And what's also interesting is to note every 1% increase in the population corresponded to an 8% increase in abundance. It's like these new people coming are bringing all this stuff with them. How's that happening? It's a correspondence, okay? We start here. The first thing we look at is their time prices go down. And on the scale, here's just a percentage change in over a year since 1980. So we see these time prices going down. And it's deceptive because a price can only drop 100% and then it's free, right? But the relationship between that percentage decrease and your abundance, if it goes to free, it means it goes to infinity. So a 75% drop in the time price is a 303% increase in your personal abundance. And then we add to that this change in population. Population is grown about 75% over the last 40 years. So you multiply that times the change in population, and that's where you get the 608 or so % increase in abundance. So now, Gordon Morse says that suggested that computer density doubles every 12 to 24 months, indicating an abundance increase from 41 to 100% a year. Now, remember that he wasn't talking about time. It's not a function of time. It was a function of quantity. The reason he observed this, he says, we're making chips at this rate of speed. It's a function of our learning over this period of time. The quantity of chips is what was important, not just time. So this chip manufacturing went from thousands to millions to billions to trillions. And that's really what we were observing, is this learning curve that he was talking about. And we think about something like, look at what it cost you back in 2011, 10 years ago. You go to Blockbuster, it's going to cost you $4.99 for a movie. And so it's costing you half of that for 1 hour of entertainment, $2.49. And that doesn't include the time it takes you to go pick up the movie and take it back and pay the late fees. Yeah, ouch, right? So the average unskilled worker in 2011 was earning about $10.40 an hour. So it took them about 14 minutes of work to be able to earn 1 hour of entertainment. Well, today Netflix is, what, $8.99 a month, and you have access to 5,000 movies. You can stream 720 hours a month, right? You can stream every hour of the day and night. So that puts the cost at about 1.25 cents an hour. So you go from that time, actually, we once again convert that back to the time price. So you go from 14 minutes down to 3.35 seconds. So for the cost to get one movie 10 years ago, you get about 250 50 movies for the same price. So once again, we look at the compound annual growth rate, and it looks like it's about 74, 75%. So we're on this same learning curve that we see happening. Now, as George notes, entrepreneurial creativity converts scarcity to abundances. Human intelligence and innovation transcend these limits of physics and atoms. Knowledge is not subject to these thermodynamics. Now, we can measure the increase in knowledge by the increase in abundance, but we can also measure this increase in knowledge by the decrease in harmful things. As Bjorn Lomborg has shown, look at this chart of climate-related deaths. He just published an update to this in the Wall Street Journal here a couple of days ago. Look at that decrease. Yeah, from 255 deaths per million down to 1.9. We have this 99.25% decrease. Each year we're getting about 5% safer. Why is that? Remember, again, we got a lot more people, but we're a lot safer. How did that happen? So he also notes, will there continue to be dangerous climate and more deaths? Yes. But we must put these catastrophes into context with facts. Our ability to adapt and thrive under negative climate conditions over the last 100 years has really been astonishing. Look at that, our ability to deal with climate. Just take a look at famines. Now, death by famine has dropped by 99.8% in the last 140 years. Our World in Data reports that in the 1870s really represent this kind of worst decade of famine. We had problems in China and India, and it suggests a rate of about 13,618 per million population. But look what happened over the next 40 years from 1870. Sorry, that's not clear, but it looks like we've got this nice decline happening, right? Yeah, we have this nice decline. And then the Marxists and the Nazis showed up. So in the 1920s and the 30s, we see millions die in China and the Soviet Union, and World War II caused large famines across Europe and Asia. And there was a breather in the 1950s, right? It looks like 1950, we kind of dropped, in the 50s, we dropped back down again. But then Mao, with his great leap forward, created the largest famine in history, killing about 24 million Chinese from 1958 to 1962. The Cambodian Marxists starved another 1.75 million in 1979. Now, prior to the 1920s, as noted here earlier, famines were by and large due to these natural causes and our inability to react to them as fast as we can today. But take a look at that chart. 1850, we stood at 1.46 billion population. Some people argue that the reason we have famines is population. But population has increased 400% to, well, the 7.34 in 2015. More people didn't cause famines. More Marxists caused famines. As Marxism has declined, we see this decline in famines as well. What would this chart look like without the Marxists and the Nazis and these other totalitarian governments? Now, the dashed green line shows you where the trend was heading, right? Where was the trend heading? It was heading down. We have this kind of big burp that happened in the early 1900s, but this progress has really been phenomenal. Now, contrary to the thinking of Thanos and some other thinkers, more people are really an insurance against famine. Innovation in food production, transportation, and communication systems allow us to identify and move food to where people are hungry. We still have these natural disasters and totalitarian governments, but the threat of starvation has really almost disappeared. Here's a chart showing solar panels. We can talk about whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, but look at the price of what's happening to the price of solar panels. We're seeing this 99% decrease in the price in just the last 43 years. That's clicking along about 13, 14% a year in terms of the compounded annual abundance of solar technology. Batteries kind of see the same thing. Really in the last 30 years, it's also indicating about a 14% compounded annual growth rate. You can say what you want to about Elon, but I think he's put us on a learning curve here on batteries this looks pretty good, right? I mean, he's focused some attention there and some learning there, and we see that product of knowledge coming out of there. A lot of us flew here today, right? Well, there's a chart for airline safety, airline deaths. It's really the rate of death that kind of ultimately counts, right? So look at that beautiful line. And the R-square, 0.9968. Look what's happening there. A drop, 95% in the last 50 years. That's about 8% safer. Do you know anybody that's died in an airplane accident, a commercial airplane accident in the last year or two, the last 10 years? Yeah, me neither. Okay, so we're enjoying this abundance of safety. Part of what happens when you get on a when you get on a learning curve, and you're able to enjoy this knowledge that's being created. Now, this guy, Thomas Selfridge, he was the first airplane crash fatality aboard a Wright brothers test flight on September 17th, 1908. Now, Orville was badly injured at the time. He suffered a broken leg and he had 4 broken ribs. And a friend visiting him in the hospital said to him, "Has it got your nerve?" And Orville repeated slightly, "Nerve?" He says, "Oh, do you mean I will be afraid to fly again? The only thing I'm afraid of is that I can't get well soon enough to finish those tests next year." Now, Wright knew that he had to get back on this learning curve in order to be able to create this flight abundance. Now, how do we get cheaper and faster flights at the same time? By the way, airline fares during this period have fallen by 50%. Boardings have increased by 1,300%. So we have this, fares go down, boardings go up, and safety goes up tremendously. How do all those things happen at once? Because every flight is an opportunity to learn something. And we learn this from every flight. More passengers mean more knowledge, and more knowledge means more safety. Wealth is knowledge, and we're discovering knowledge and creating knowledge at faster and faster rates. Our research was also inspired by Paul Romer, and he incorporated explicitly this idea of knowledge creation in his economic models. And he says something interesting. He says, we'll come to understand that knowledge is non-rivalrous, and that we can start treating all people on the earth as potential collaborators and not rivals in discovering and creating true wealth for one another. Now, in traditional economics, the law of supply declares that as prices go up, quantity supplied will actually go up. Now, this is true as long as there's no learning. Now, but every time an additional unit is produced and acquired by a customer, producers get better at making it, and consumers also get better at learning it, learning how to use it. So you have both consumers and producers that are learning together, adding to the knowledge base. So we see this in this idea of learning curves. Every time you can double output, you see the per unit cost fall between 20 and 30%. So it's this phenomenal thing where we can invert the supply curve. The more you make, the smarter you get. The smarter you get, the lower the prices, or the greater the abundance that you can actually enjoy. All right. So in 1990, a goal was set to map the entire 3 billion letter human genome. Dr. Eric Green, who worked on this project since its inception, has been the director of the National Human Genome Research Institute for more than a decade. And he noted the first genome cost us about $1 billion. Now when we sequence a person's genome, it's less than $1,000. So it's a million-fold reduction. Now, they track this cost. And notice the vertical scale is logarithmic, and the solid white line is Moore's law. Okay, and look at what they've experienced, kind of following Moore's law, but they had this punctuated innovation that occurred when they actually discovered a new way to from the Sanger-based method to this what they call the second generation method. And look at that big drop that occurred there. Now there's a group of Chinese entrepreneurs at BGI that hope to get the price down to $100, $100. Using advanced robotics. Now, a blue-collar worker in 2003 was earning about $21 an hour, so they would only have to spend somewhere, what was it, about 46 million hours to be able to buy their genome. And today, if this happens, if you can really get it down to $100, it's three hours. So that abundance, the time price has dropped by 99.99999. 3%. So what it would cost to get one genome in 2003, you get somewhere around 15 billion today. This is an example of probably one of the fastest learning curves in history that we're experiencing right now. After Steve Jobs introduced it's about 129% a year is what that compounded annual growth rate was. After Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone back in 2007, he was persuaded. Remember when he first introduced the iPhone, he didn't want to have anybody else make any apps for it. He wanted to keep, and someone persuaded him, Steve, you really should have let other people come into this game because you don't know what they might come up with, right? So he was persuaded to open the platform. Well, there's a new report. What George would say is it set off this effervescence of discovery and creativity. A new report published by the app analytics firm App Annie said the 2021 mobile app market is estimated to be $6.3 trillion, up from $1.3 trillion in 2016. Now, these figures represent income generated through the App Store and other forms of monetization, such as in-app apps and mobile commerce. So from 2016 to 2021, the user base also doubled from 3.4 billion to 6.3 billion. Now think about this, 80% of the planet has been mobilized. To do what? Well, really think about it is we went from virtually nothing in 2007 to 6.3 trillion in 14 years. That would be a compounded annual growth rate of about 720%. Now that's an exceptional example of a learning curve. But the knowledge that we can create with knowledge, it's truly astonishing when everybody on the planet gets on learning curves. And all of us, the rest of us, get to enjoy one another's knowledge. Now, in George's book, Knowledge and Power, in order for entrepreneurial creativity and surprise to thrive, right? It's the idea of surprise. And we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, we're trying to make this forecast into the future, what's going to happen, we can model it. No, we really can't model it because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We have this surprise factor. What he argues there is that we need these low entropy clear channels. And the big problem today, and I think maybe Neil would agree, is that the noise in this channel is caused by governments. Government noise is preventing us from being able to have this clear channel where this high entrepreneur, George knows what I'm talking about. We have to have this channel that doesn't have noise in it. And if you have that order, then creativity can actually occur. Now, what we really should be thinking about, in my mind, oh yeah, there's the app economy. It's 720% a year since Steve Jobs introduced it back in 2007. What we really should be thinking about is what is our rate of knowledge production per hour? And our ability to be able to discover new knowledge, to create new knowledge, for acquiring it, for combining it, and ultimately for sharing it. It's doing this exponential curve right now. It really is. So you might know this guy. Carver, I think, knows this guy. Stephen Wolfram. did the Mathematica program. He released this program called Wolfram Alpha here a couple of years ago. He's got 10 trillion pieces of information, data that he's put in there, and he's got Mathematica with this data, so it's like a real smart version of Google that does math for you. And you can get a free version, or if you buy the pro version, it costs you 18 cents a day. So this phenomenal ability, once again, to be able to have access to knowledge and be able to think about how do I create new knowledge. New guy here last week, Karl Malamud. He released a file, 38 terabytes, 107 million journal articles. And he's gone in and taken all those articles and created 355 billion word and sentence fragments. And, you know, for what, $1,500, you can buy a 40 terabyte drive and put 107 million journals on there that you can do searching on it. So you got those products. You've got this new phone that Google and Indian GeoNet have produced, $87 in India. India makes you make about $5 an hour in India. So it takes about 2 days to earn the money to buy one of these phones. It's equivalent to the US of about $500. But get this, their internet access price is 5 cents. I think it's 5 cents per, where's my number? It's 5 cents. Hang on a second. 5 cents per gigabyte versus $1 per gigabyte in the US. So it's 20 times cheaper to access. So you give everybody access to these files, this data, you give them really the analytical tools, you give them a phone, and you say 5 cents an hour, go for it. Get on, find yourself a learning curve and go learn something. And then we'll take it to the market and see if it's valuable or not. All right, so anybody know this house? The address? Yeah, 2066 Chris Drive in Los Altos, California. Are we running late? Yeah, just a couple. Okay, 30, hang on a second here. This is where these two Steves went from 0 to 1, right? They actually went from 0 in 1976 to 2.5 trillion in 45 years. The same year, 76, is when our friends across the street, Bill and his friends, started Microsoft. 76, kind of this key year, and I kind of feel like, you know, what's similar about 1976 and 2021? If you were around in 1976, it didn't feel very good. It feels a lot like it feels today. So William Nordhaus also made another important contribution when he talked about what % of new innovation do producers actually keep and who gets the rest. And he said that producers keep about 2.2% and the consumers get the rest. It's like taking a pie, cutting it into 44 slices and giving your consumer, your customers, 43 of those slices. Yeah, so if that's the case and the market value of Apple is the present value of all future benefits, then an apple that's worth 2.5 trillion today is really produced 111 trillion for every person on, for the rest of us. And that's about $16,000 per person. Now what, that might seem like that's a lot of money, Apple, but you know, I ask my students, and sometimes it's not what you pay for something that counts, it's what I have to pay you to not use it that really reveals how much it's worth to you. So when I ask my students, what would I have to pay you to give up your iPhone? I haven't found a student that's willing to do it for less than $5 million. So 14, 15,000 might be a low value that they've created, right? For the rest of us. So here's the point is, you know, do we have adversity today? Yeah, but Adobe's got this great statement. They say adversity is when the best of every human being shows up. Now, remember that in 1996, everybody thought that Apple was doomed, right? If you do adjusted to the price, it was like 10 cents a share. Everybody thought Apple was doomed. And when Jobs actually returned in 1997 after 12 years in the wilderness, he faced these daunting problems. You know, the innovating spirit of Apple was being ravaged by this pathogen of pessimism. And virtually nobody gave Apple a chance, but Steve Jobs did. He said what? He had this vision about what he wanted to create for the planet, and he did not let things interfere with his vision. And it began to recover. Now remember that he took charge, and the first thing that he did is he had to eject worm tongue from the building. Right? You remember the Think Different commercial they did? That commercial was really about Apple employees. It was directed to Apple employees, and it was what? Stop thinking like losers. We're a great company. We can become great again. But it was very hard for him to actually accomplish that. Remember in 2002, that stock price of Apple, it fell by 90%. It fell by 51% in one day. So a lot of work that he had to take care of there. He introduces the first iMac, 1998. Look what's happened there. A month after 9/11, he introduces the first iPod, and then we get the iPhone, and then the iPad. It became this organization that just learned. They not a computer. Remember they dropped the name Apple Computers. No, it's not Apple Computers, just Apple, because it's like, what are we? Well, we're a learning company. We're an innovation learning company. Look at what they're spending on R&D. They're growing about 27, 28% a year in terms of their R&D spending. They're trying to figure out how to get new knowledge. Now, as George has so eloquently described, we are doomed if we separate knowledge from power. You got to read his book and understand this connection between knowledge and power. Now, the centralization of power in the hands of a tiny elite of experts and bureaucrats and politicians, from the knowledge in the minds and the hands of billions of creative entrepreneurs, is surely a recipe for disaster. We agree with Professor Ferguson. Go read his book, go to the bottom of page 383. And he says, plagues do not halt progress if progress is happening. And we see this progress all around us. Everywhere you look, tell me something that's actually becoming more scarce, other than human beings, right? I just close by saying George has offered another message, and he said that the human capacity to defeat doom is infinite, that we should fear not, we should be of good cheer, and we should let our hearts be comforted by this knowledge that we have. And we must be the leaders that go forth and take this light to the world and restore ourselves to where we can lead with our ability to learn and grow. Thank you very much.